As future homeopathic physicians, the ultimate mandate of the practitioner is the rapid, predictable, and permanent restoration of human health. To achieve cure, Hahnemann established a clinician must map two verifiable realities. First is the disease picture, precise mapping of the patient's unique suffering, sensations, and modalities. Second is the medicine picture, understanding the pathogenic power inherent in a substance, its capacity to produce specific symptoms. The therapeutic task is a strict scientific matching process between these two datasets. You cannot reliably match a patient's symptoms to a medicine whose effects you do not actually know. A clinical prescription is therefore only as defensible as the empirical quality of its underlying source data. For centuries, medical knowledge was built on weak epistemological foundations, relying heavily on folklore and unverified clinical compilations. Traditions like the Doctrine of Signatures assumed a plant could cure liver disease simply because its leaf resembled a liver. This relied on superficial physical analogies rather than biological evidence. Clinicians later committed a major error outlined in Aphorism 107. They attempted to map a drug's pure effects by testing it on actively sick patients. Testing an experimental drug during an active illness creates a severe methodological problem known as entanglement. The existing natural disease overpowers the subtle alterations the drug might produce, masking the signal. If a new symptom appears on day 4 of treatment, it becomes impossible to determine its true origin. Could it be a medicinal effect, a spontaneous complication of illness, or a stress response to treatment? To isolate a pure, untangled medicinal signal, testing must occur on healthy human subjects, completely isolated from confounding disease variables. This requirement leads to the gold standard of homeopathic research, the prospective homeopathic pathogenic trial, or proving. Systematic provings require human volunteers because they are the only subjects capable of articulating precise emotional states, subjective pain qualities, and subtle environmental modifiers. This timeline charts a modern proving protocol for a new botanical tincture. We will look at a specific volunteer, designated Prover 07. Before any substance is administered, the prover undergoes a 7 to 14-day baseline run-in phase, meticulously logging their everyday sensations. The baseline maps the volunteer's physiological background noise. We record their normal, habitual symptoms to prevent false positive attributions. On day 15, the test substance is administered. On day 19, Prover 07 reports a severe throbbing headache in the right temple, accompanied by intense insomnia. The immediate analytical challenge is obvious. Is this day 19 headache a genuine pathogenic effect of the botanical tincture, or is it just background noise? Self-reported medical data is meaningless unless it is measured against a rigorously documented control state. To evaluate that day 19 symptom, the trial relies on the daily neutral supervisor debrief. Volunteers are highly vulnerable to expectancy bias. They often unwittingly confabulate or overinterpret physical sensations in a desire to provide useful data to the researchers. Supervisors must use strictly non-leading questioning. If a supervisor asks, "Did your head feel hot after taking the medicine?" they pollute the data. Instead, they use neutral prompts to keep the record objective. During Prover 07's daily debrief, the supervisor uncovers critical context missing from the initial diary entry. Just prior to the headache onset on day 19, the prover consumed 2 double-shot espressos while under intense academic stress preparing for a university exam. Strict, neutral interviewing is the only mechanism available to intercept powerful confounding variables before they become permanently enshrined in the proving dataset. Beyond identifying confounders, like caffeine or stress, adjudicators must analyze the chronological sequence of a reported symptom. This graph charts a drug's temporal action. The downward curve illustrates primary action, the direct alteration of sensations produced by the medicinal agent. This upward swing represents secondary reaction, the organism's automatic counterresponse, working to restore physiological equilibrium. A symptom's validity depends heavily on falling within a pharmacologically plausible temporal window corresponding to these phases. To map the full extremes of these temporal dynamics, Aphorism 110 instructs adjudicators to cross-reference controlled proving data with historical records of accidental poisonings. Poisonings involve massive, uncontrolled chemical doses. They yield undeniable, gross organic pathology and severe end-stage tissue destruction. Provings operate on the opposite end of the spectrum. They reveal the subtle, subjective, and dynamic functional nuances that a severe toxicological overdose completely obliterates. While valuable, poisoning reports carry high confounding variables of their own, including uncertain initial doses, polyingestions, and the effects of emergency medical interventions like gastric lavage. A complete Materia Medica is built by triangulating the subjective precision of healthy human provings with the objective extremes of toxicological records. This matrix represents the final symptom adjudication process. To evaluate Prover 07, we must apply the 4 critical source appraisal questions using these quadrants. First, was the symptom completely new? The baseline run-in data reveals the prover has a pre-existing history of tension headaches. Next, what was the precise timing, and were there competing external causes? We must cross-reference the 10:30 p.m. symptom onset against the 9 p.m. consumption of highly concentrated caffeine and acute academic anxiety. Physiological stimulants and acute psychological stressors completely override subtle pathogenic signals from an experimental tincture. Based on the baseline overlap and major external confounders, this symptom cannot be attributed to the medicine. It is classified as doubtful and confounded. True scientific rigor demands rejecting highly plausible symptoms when strong alternative causes are present. To ever rescue a symptom from the doubtful archive requires rigorous proof. It must be independently replicated in unexposed provers within a double-blind, placebo-controlled cohort, or verified through repeated clinical success. The ultimate goal of a pathogenic trial is not to gather the largest volume of symptoms. It is a process of strict elimination, stripping away physiological noise until only the pure medicinal signal remains. This rigorously filtered record returns us to the clinic, directly fulfilling Hahnemann's second point necessary for cure. Homeopathic knowledge of medicines is never assumed, borrowed, or guessed. It is painstakingly constructed through strict empirical elimination.